I'm Rob Licuria, Senior Editor at Gold Derby, here with Jason Zimmerman, Emmy-winning visual effects supervisor for Star Trek Discovery and Star Trek Strange New Worlds. Jason, this past year in Star Trek has featured the Gorn, the Breen, Strange New Worlds really hitting its stride, Discovery going out with a bang. It's a really great time to be a Star Trek fan, isn't it?
It is, yeah. I mean, there's a lot that was packed into a very short amount of time for the fans and two different series entirely with two completely different tones. So there's a little something for everybody.
Yeah, there really is. And it just brings me to this. After production on Discovery's fifth season ended late last year, news broke about season five being Discovery's final season a few months later. What was your initial reaction to that news?
I was definitely emotional about it. I mean, Discovery was my, first Trek job. It was my foray into the franchise, and I was there from day one of shooting all the way through to the last day of shooting. And so, it's always bittersweet. It's been a privilege to be involved all along the way and be able to see it evolve and work with all the great different, directors and writers and crew members and everybody. I mean, it's just been such a great ride, and it's been sort of my starting point to all the different treks that I've been able to work on, Strange New Worlds, Picard, Section 31. So I was sad to see it go, but fortunately I have so much other trek in my future that I get to keep playing in the sandbox.
You realize by you saying that when this gets onto social media, people are going to immediately be wondering, what's he talking about? Let's hear about Section 31. Is there going to be a legacy? What's happening? We're obsessed with more
I
and
know.
more and more.
I know.
But
Just some
all right.
breadcrumbs. I won't say much more. I'll just leave some breadcrumbs.
Just leave the breadcrumbs and zip
Yeah.
because we don't want you to get into trouble.
No.
Tell me later. All right, so I, for one, am going to be really sad when Discovery is over. And full disclosure, I have seen the whole fifth season, and I was going to wear a black veil to this interview. I decided that probably wasn't the best professional look, so that's why I didn't do it. I'm going to miss the show. So I would like to know, about some of the things that we've seen in season five and we're about to see as well, because I think this season's going to end up being the show's best, and that's saying a lot because I'm one of the purists that just loved season one, loved season two, I love season three, season four. This season is killing me. Okay, so the ambitious story arc for Discovery's final season was a gamble again by Alex and Michelle, the showrunners, reintroducing the progenitors, and then of course the Breen. For every Star Trek nerd, that's like one of the that's gold. So I want to know, when you were first briefed about season five, way back in the day, what
Mhm.
first comes to mind as the thing that you were most excited about?
Uh, you know, it, Discovery is always such a challenging show that whenever you start, there's, I think, a few minutes of panic that set in, like, wow, we're really going big this year. And, you start from that sort of moment, and then you kind of calm down a little bit and start to break it down into its composite parts. And, throughout the series, throughout the season, there were all these opportunities to sort of stretch our legs creatively, but also technically and sort of, challenges from a filmmaking standpoint. The Sandrunner sequence comes to mind, certainly right off the bat to kick off the season. That was a lot of fun to plan. And I had started talking with our executive producer director, Olatunde, way early on about that, probably 8 months to a year before we actually shot it. We started breaking down what we were going to do with that sequence, what the plan was, what the assets would look like, which was a virtual production asset. That sequence was a combination of visual effects, traditional shooting, and virtual production all sort of rolled into one. And the things that we did with virtual production sort of were unlike things we'd done in the past, where we actually had practical sand runners that the actors acted on. They were on gimbals, they moved in relationship to the wall. So it was a very sort of interactive experience for them, special effects, wind, dust, the whole thing. So right off the bat, that's kind of where we started, and that was the sort of set the tone for the season of what we were going to be doing. And so that was a really, really fun one to work on. And I think, we never slowed down after that. It seems like every episode had its challenges in one way or another, whether it was a new creature or, a new asset or whatever. So we really stayed busy.
Yeah, the season premiere starts with Burnham ship surfing in a warp slipstream, and then we get the sequence later on with Burnham, Book, and Rayna chasing Lark and Mole on these anti-grav sand runners. It's just mind-blowing. This is amazing. And I immediately thought, like, Denny Villeneuve, eat your heart out. Like, this is This is really, really impressive for a TV show. It must take an absolute village of people in your team and vendors to make that kind of scene fly because there's dialogue, there's still some story exposition, and of course, an exciting chase. It's like a car chase, a throwback. So, talk me through the amount of effort and time and the amount of people involved to make that kind of sequence work.
Sure. I mean, in general, the filmmaking process has to be a collaboration in order to be successful. Virtual production is an interesting one because it takes just as many people, even though there's a lot of visual effects components to it, you really have to invite everybody else to the party and you can't do it without them. And, every department is affected by what we do in that volume. And so it really is something that belongs to the show as a whole. And so all of the departments on the show from top to bottom have to be involved in the process. They have to know what the storyboards are and then what the previs is and how the sand runners move and how they behave and like everybody contributes to all of that. And even down to costumes, it's important to know like what the costumes are going to be that they're wearing while they're riding the sand runners. All that stuff factors in. So from the minute you start talking about it, every department is involved. And then if you want to extend it into the visual effects realm, there's probably another 500 to 700 artists a year that work on our shows to make them what they are, 10, 15 vendors, depending on how busy we are. So it truly does take a ton of creative artists and a collaboration and it requires a lot of communication. I mean, daily checking in. Here's where the asset is today. Here's what we're thinking. Here's something that is a challenge that somebody's facing that we all kind of have to put our heads together and hopefully come up with a solution that works for everyone. But it's been really fun because it allows us to really collaborate with everybody in a new way on something that we all sort of collectively have to bring our best to make it look good.
Yeah, well, I think one of the legacies, pardon the pun, of this show is that you guys never phone it in. You could have just, this sequence, chasing like a mole, could have just been running through the streets of this alien city. But no, 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 we're going to do it on anti-grav sand runners. And that's what gets us so excited. We're always getting something new, which we're going to touch on a little later when we talk about Strange New Worlds. So I want to talk about the Breen because I'm a humongous Trek nerd and I've always been so fascinated, like a lot of fans, about the Breen, and I'm so happy that we're finally getting to know them. Um, Talk us through the different elements of realizing the creative vision for what the Breen look like when they take off their masks, and of course the amazing spaceships from a VFX perspective.
Sure. I mean, anything that's canon in Star Trek when you're bringing it to screen after we haven't seen it in a while is always very daunting. And there's such a legacy with Trek that it's always terrifying to start. You want to make sure that you get it right. You want to make sure that you pay the proper attention and homage to what has come before you. Again, credit to production design, credit to everybody who brought their best in terms of the early designs of everything. The Breen was something that we knew would fit well sort of into the virtual production space just based on the script and the sort of how things sort of unfurled. And so when we started creating that asset, we quickly realized we were building something pretty special. And so the Breen ship, and you've seen it from the exterior, obviously, is massive. The interior is equally as massive, but built for the virtual production stage. And so I think I may get the numbers not exactly right, but I want to say that the asset's approximately 10 kilometers long of actual digital builds that we had to create. And in there are ships and digi doubles and all these little details and everything. I mean, it's actually interesting just to fly around in the asset, which we had to do a lot to make sure that we got the details right. And so it was really, really fun because it was something that we were bringing to life, but also, again, a technical challenge unlike we've ever had before because we had to create this giant asset. It had to be ready for the day that we shot. And it's the Breen on top of everything else. And there were some really cool moments that we had in there, some shots we had starting on soldiers and sort of flying through the environment to arrive at where the camera was and all those sorts of things, which just, really, really big shots, which is just because feels like it's part of our DNA in Discovery to sort of attempt those things. And so we're really proud with where it ended up.
The thing is with the Breen is like we've seen so many new alien races introduced over the years, and so I imagine the production design team, visual effects team, are constantly looking for ways to innovate and give us something new, a new spin, and you did it again because the Breen ship is so gargantuan, it's huge. And so then it brings me to this issue. It's well, not issue. This question. This virtual production technology. A lot of people don't really understand that the team has basically created this holodeck with over 2,000 LED monitors, and I assume that that means that the people on set, the director, the DP, the actors, can see a lot of this in camera, and that means that they can make decisions about look and feel in real time. And to me, that is so innovative and so unusual. So talk us through that whole process.
Yeah, exactly right. I mean, it's based on, game engine technology on, the LED screens like you're talking about. And it's in our case, ours is massive. It's like 70 feet in diameter. So it allows for this very immersive experience. And when we build the assets, traditionally with visual effects, we may get a design, but then they're going to shoot, and then we have to see that design realized later in post when we put it in. But in this case, it's going to be in camera. And so we need to start much earlier in the process. It's typically at least a 3 to 5 month span from once we have approved designs to when we've built something so that it's ready for camera. Along the way, there's a ton of meetings with all the departments, like I alluded to make sure that everybody gets what they need out of the asset, that they have their time to give feedback, that the DPs are able to give feedback about lighting and texture and detail and color and all those things. And the same goes for production design, and the directors have to see it and sort of say, here's where I want to stage this here. We have to know, because you can't hero out the whole asset necessarily to run around and choose later. You have to know we're going to stage things here, here, and here, and so that we know to give it the proper detail. And so it's a lot of meetings beforehand. Credit to our vendor Pixamondo, and our supervisor there, Fausto, was instrumental in sort of helping us make sure that we stayed on track and that we were making the right decisions so that it would work on the day. But it's a really fascinating thing to do, because then you walk on stage on the day and it's not blue screen, which we've done plenty of times and we know how to do in our sleep. You're in the breen ship. And so the actors are acting in the breen ship. The director is pointing to an eye line that he sees in the breen ship. And I think that's invaluable, because it just sort of allows for an immersion and an experience for them that you just probably don't get from blue screen as much. Not that they don't do a great job of doing it there as well, but there's nothing, better than the real thing. And when they're standing there and they can see ships going by in the background and just get a sense of the depth of that space, I think it really sort of helps to propel the storytelling even further.
It's, to me as a layperson, it's kind of like, it seems even a little old school. It's going back to basics in terms of how productions are done when it's such a visual show, and yet of course it's so innovative and so technologically advanced. And I always then wonder, like, why haven't more shows and TV and films been using this technology? And I guess it's very new, and it's something that hasn't really been around for a very long time.
It is newish. It's been around for a bit. I think we're seeing it start to get adopted quite a bit. I'm starting to recognize it on other shows because it does have so many applications. I mean, just being able to shoot indoors when you don't have to be outside and yet you have the environment of outside. I mean, there's a lot of applications that are very practical for productions from a schedule standpoint, from a location standpoint. There's a lot that it lends itself to. So I think it's definitely being adopted very quickly. I can say that when we did it, we started in the pandemic, which, literally at the height of the pandemic. So we're in lockdown and we're trying to sort of learn these things without the ability to go out and go visit a stage and go talk to anybody. So it was all done virtually over Zoom and FaceTime. And literally I would have people on set showing me on FaceTime saying, here's what it looks like now. So, I think now that things are coming out of the pandemic and everybody can kind of go around, and there's also more and more shows using it, I think we're going to see even a larger influx of that into other productions.
Yeah, and that's I guess that's a really welcome change for the industry. Also about Discovery, episode 5.4, Face the Strange, one of my favorite Star Trek episodes in such a long time. I had so much fun with that. I loved seeing the older version of Burnham as the mutineer versus the current version of Burnham as a captain and hero. The whole episode it just soars. It's so brilliant. And so you tell me what was the absolute VFX highlight from that particular episode?
I mean, it's always fun to do two of the same person in the same shot. I mean, it's a very traditional, old school, classic approach to visual effects. A lot of it is done credit to direction with, just the proper blocking, body doubles, all, photo doubles, all those sorts of things. But it's always a fun gag to see and be able to play the two people off of each other in the same frame. So I think that would probably be the highlight. It's a lot of fun.
I've always wondered, ever since I was a little kid watching like that really daggy Lily Tomlin Bette Midler movie Big Business when you got the
Big
same
business.
actor.
Yeah.
I'm like, what? How do they do this? It's magic, and I
Yeah.
still have no idea how you do it. It's so
Yeah.
impressive.
Well, sometimes the simplest effects are often the most effective, and that is one. It's funny you bring up Big Business. I happened to have watched that like within the last 6 months, but yeah, I mean, I remember growing up as a kid, and I was like, how are they both? How are the same person in the same frame? I mean, I think it's a really cool effect.
It so is. Let's move on to Strange New Worlds.
Yeah.
The season two finale features the Enterprise fighting against different generations of Gorn. Like, yes, the Gorn, that is so cool, including an adult Gorn in zero gravity fight with Lieutenant Spock and Nurse Christine Chapel. Breathtaking. Just, I have no question. Just talk to me about it.
Oh yeah, I mean, I think that's one of the episodes out of all the episodes I've done, and I've done a lot now, a lot of seasons of Trek. I think that's one of the ones I'm the most proud of. I think the sequence with Chapel and Spock and the adult Gorn is just was such a fun one to work on, and we had some really sort of epic, beautiful shots we were able to create that helped with the story and everything. So. Yeah, just a great episode. We got to really sort of stretch our legs technically. That Cayuga partial damage dish, I think is maybe one of, if not it's probably one of, I won't say it's the biggest. I'd say it's probably the top 5 biggest assets we've ever built just because we built every deck, every room, every monitor. It's all there. So if
Wow.
you zoom in, you can see there's so much additional detail there to be seen. And then, again, it's playing with the Gorn, which is such a beloved character in the Star Trek universe, such a precious character to the fans, and again, talk about something that's daunting and scary. We sort of knew we would eventually get here since season 1, and to sort of finally realize that and be playing with this adult Gorn and showing it in all its glory, was just something that was such a treat to be able to play with.
I realize by saying this, it's going to make me look like I really need to get a life and get out more, but it gives me butterflies just thinking about the possibilities for next season. And so, from what you're aware of, from your perspective as VFX supervisor, is there an intention to further explore the Gorn and what they look like and sound like and act like?
I probably shouldn't say anything other than to say that season 2 obviously ended on a bit of a cliffhanger, right?
Yeah.
So I will say season 3 is the show that everybody has come to know and love. Strange New Worlds is only going to get better. I will say that.
So exciting. I mean, that brings me to this. With Strange New Worlds, the first season was such a milestone in Trek lore and just in terms of its look and feel. And is there this desire to take this familiar aesthetic and then for every season make it new, fresh, and exciting, and then kind of swing for the fences and go for things that we've never seen before? And how do you do that? Like when do you finally reach that point where you can't go any further, or does that not happen?
I think every time we start an episode, I'm like, this is it. I'm out of ideas. I think that's just normal, especially when you've done. I think I've done what 12 seasons of Star Trek now.
Yeah.
I think you're always up against that challenge, but the good thing is each of the shows, it has its own sort of unique tone.
Mm.
So right off the bat, you can kind of separate a Discovery from a Strange New Worlds. They have different sort of visual languages to start with, but Strange definitely is rooted in sort of the original series and a lot of the original effects and sort of legacy characters and legacy ships. And so, kind of going into it, what to expect. At the same time, we are at a time where technology allows us to do a lot more, right? And so it really is about finding sort of that happy medium, but always staying true to where it came from, because that is what the fans really know and love. And that's what I, grew up with, is the old school Trek stuff. And so it's really saying, yeah, we can do a new version of the transporter. However, we still need to make sure that everybody looks at that and goes, that's the transporter. And they don't have to go, what are they trying to pull off here? And so I think, especially with Star Trek, there's so many of these legacy effects that you need to get right, and you need to make sure that they look like the originals, because otherwise they'll take you out of the story. It could be the most incredible effect ever, but if it's not your transporter that you remember from when you were a kid, that's going to take you out of the story the same as a bad blue screen would, right? So it adds a little bit of more pressure, because you got to make sure that it can't just be good in any setting. It has to be good for Star Trek. It has to still pay homage to what came before it.
Yeah, I mean, I say this with as the highest compliment, but when I'm watching I'm not really noticing the effects and the production design and I'm just so into the story. I tend to notice this stuff on a rewatch where I'm picking apart what you've done, and usually I'm completely in awe of how impressive it all looks. So I guess that's the job. You want to support the creative vision and the story. That's fundamental, right?
100%. No, I really appreciate that you say that, because I feel like, at the end of the day, if the spectacle takes you away from the story, it doesn't matter how great the spectacle is. The whole reason we're here, the reason I have a job, is to help tell a story. And so, going back to the Gorn episode of the finale, that those shots at the end are some of my favorite. And there is a lot of visual effects to it, but they're also very much tied to telling the story. And being able to work with the writers and the showrunners and them telling us this is the story we're trying to tell, and then being able to achieve that in a way that's both beautiful but also a really cool and exciting shot. I mean, that is the goal 100%.
Yeah. And it reminds me when I was much, much younger in 1987 when TNG first came out. Fast forward to now and how far Star Trek has come. And of course, how you guys are just at the top of your game in the industry. You must be super proud of the whole of the achievements so far.
Oh, thank you so much. Yeah, no, it's such a gift to be able to wake up every day and work on Star Trek, and to be able to do it with my team, they're all incredible people. We've all worked together for 15 years probably. We all love what we're doing, love Star Trek. I mean, you couldn't ask for a better situation.
On that note, Jason, congratulations on some impressive work, and thank you so much for your insight today.
Oh, my pleasure. Thank you for having me.